Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully, my recording is doing pretty well. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are living. So, usually I make videos in my own native language, that is Urdu language. But today, this will be a special one in English because this video is made in English. So, I want to pass some comments about this video right here. So, as you can see, it is by Useful Charts, and he says that he has done a collaboration with himself, this guy whose channel's name is Let's Talk Religion, and then Al Mukhadima. The project which the collaboration which they started is Project Historicity, in which they are going to talk about three historical figures and find out if they really existed or not. And what are they going to do? They're going to find out what evidence is available for each religious figure outside of religious tradition. And looks like that this guy is a Jewish. He says that he's a Jewish. This guy probably, I don't know what he says about himself. And Al Muqaddimah, he does say that he's a Muslim and he wants to get a secular approach to Islam. Now, I'm a Christian, so I don't know if I can talk about Islam, but I can really talk about Moses and Jesus. So I'm going to talk about them because I am a Christian and I believe in the Judeo Christian scriptures, the Torah, the prophets, the Gospels. So I'm going to make two videos about Moses and then one about Jesus, which is right here. As you can see, did Jesus exist? Because these two people say that Moses and Jesus, they did not really exist. They were just figures of legend. So we want to talk about that. So let's see what he has to say in his video about his case that Moses did not exist.
This one. How do we know that anyone in history really existed? Well, the best evidence would be, of course, to find a person's physical remains. So, take for example King Richard III of
And
England.
he goes on to explain that he was dead, he was buried, but his grave was lost, and it was found in a parking lot. And it was recently found, so that means about 600 years, we can say. He died in 1485, and right now, when I'm making this video, it's 2021. So, in about 600 years, his grave was lost, but we did found it in a parking lot. So, this would be the best one. But what is the next option? Let's see.
2012, using radiocarbon dating on any. But what about someone from much further back? Say, for example, Alexander the Great, who supposedly died in 323
So we
BCE.
cannot find his physical remains. What we can do, we can find archaeological evidence. We have his tablet, coin, and everything else. So this is how we find. But what about people who are much, much, much further back in history? What about them?
Archaeological evidence dating from when the person was still alive. All three of the religious figures in this series, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, fall into this category. In these cases, we have to rely entirely on textual sources.
Now I want you to pay attention what he said. He said we have to rely entirely on textual evidence. And how is it going to be? What qualifies as a textual evidence?
And by textual sources, I don't mean a few words carved into stone. I mean lengthy works of literature, usually written first on parchment and then later copied onto paper and made into
So
books.
he says that we want lengthy works of literature. This is the only thing we which can prove that a person really existed. Do you know how many works do we have of Plato? How many copies do we have of his work? Only four. And how many copies do we have of the Torah? In thousands. And we have a detailed historical record. We have record of Moses' birth until his death. So how much more record do you want to know? We have full detail of his life. But he poses another thing. He poses another, how do you say, obstacle, if we can say, or a doubt, and which about we will deal about it. But let's say that we have the Bible, which is a textual evidence about Moses. We have thousands of copies, and we have lengthy work of art. That means Moses existed. But he has some problems with it. So let's see what problems does he have with it.
This is where things get a bit tricky because when it comes to ancient history, we often get textual sources that differ from one another when it comes to what actually happened. This leads some people to conclude that there's no way of knowing the truth.
Okay, now he says that we have many textual sources and all of them contradict each other. So this is not the case entirely, I will say. For example, as I already said, the Bible is a lengthy work of art. It already qualifies and it was written at the time of Moses. So the two qualifications which are required for a historical document to be reliable is one, it is a lengthy work of art, as he said, and second, when it was written, the Torah was written at Moses' time. So it qualifies. Another thing that we find is we have here Josephus Flavius. Now he was a historian, and if you search about him, you will find that Josephus Flavius was, you know, um, not very biased. In fact, is his work is trustworthy. Historians trust his work. His work is, you know, looked on for references about Jewish history, especially. So, okay, let's say that he was a Jewish, he was biased, but then the Book of Jubilees, it is a commentary on Moses' life, so it doesn't contradict the history of Al-Tabri. This is Muslim and resource, and the Muslim resource also points, witnesses the Moses account. The Kebra Nagas, this is historical document, although it's not full. I do not believe that it is fully historically accurate, but it also accepts the story written in the Bible. Then Manetho actually changed a little bit of the things, but still he has the same story as written in the Bible. So we have one, two, three, four, five, six sources, or we can say five witnesses to the one historical source. They are saying the same thing as the Bible is saying. So how can we have conflicting? I mean, I don't know about these four. I haven't checked these four to be really honest. But six out of four, 10, they are saying the same thing. So what more do you want? From what I realized, that this person is taking what he wants to take and rejecting or not taking into consideration other things. But okay, let's see what else he has to say about these things.
Really happened. This leads some people,
Yeah.
arbits, scholarship, which
Okay, then he
but sociologists
tells about the historical method, and these are his points. We will go about them one by one. You can watch full video of him in the link given below, but I'm going to just take it one by one and explain what he says. So does the source match archaeological record? Well, first of all, he did say that we have to rely entirely on the textual evidence. So why archaeological evidence should be there when you said that entirely we have to rely on textual evidence? So you contradict yourself. This is what you do. Then are there multiple sources that all tell the same story? Yes, they all tell the same story, but the archaeological record actually proves what is written in the Bible. So we will see. Even though he says that it is not, and even though we see that he said that he contradicts himself, but we will see that actually we find archaeological finds that prove that the story written in the Torah is actually true. Then he says, is there any chance that the source is biased? We will talk about these points later on, but let's just take it one by one. Okay, then he goes on to explain that all ancient people wrote history in the same way that we write it today. Well, and then he goes on to explain, no, it is not like that. People wrote, stories according to their culture or stuff. So yes, there I will agree with him, but still he needs to explain whatever he is doing, or what was history. So history was not as we know it. It was only the works of glory. The nations, the kings, they will only write about their accomplishments, their wins, their things, that their glory things. So it wasn't history. History, we started to have a developed form of history when Herodotus came, and that was in the ancient Greek. It is much, much, much before. So now you need to realize that all the historical documents that we have before them, they were all only the glory of the kings. But very interestingly, the Bible doesn't have this. The Torah is not the glory of the Jewish people, and we will see how. Anyways, then he goes on to explain about Moses, and he says that he is a history teacher and a Jewish, and he denies his own history. Very interesting. And he explains the story of Moses. If you all know, if you do not know, well, he says the biblical story correctly, and you can watch any uh, Christian channel about Moses. Okay, so here he comes and he says, does the source match the archaeological record? Again, a sort of hypocrisy from his side. He said that we have to rely entirely on textual sources, but whatever. Okay, let's see.
Whether or not this account of 1,000 found there
So
between
this is
million
the number Moses took. This is the year.
100 interpretation at that time
Okay, now
period
let's see what he has.
well, there is
Now
nothing
let's see what he has to say.
in the archaeological record for that time period, or any other time period for that matter, to suggest a sudden population drop of 2 million people
Okay, now here he says that we do not have any archaeological record that there was a sudden drop of 2 million people. That's one.
within Egypt, nor 2 million people traveling through the Sinai Peninsula, nor 2 million people suddenly arriving in Canaan and replacing the existing population there. Even if the Egypt
Okay, so there is not a historical evidence of a sudden drop. We do not have evidence of 2 million people traveling through Sinai Desert. And then there is no evidence of people arriving in Canaan and replacing the people living there. So, first of all, one thing that there was a sudden drop of 2 million people in Egypt. There is evidence. So, earliest evidence was animal pens, and we also find small village of simple mud brick houses with an adjoining cemetery. The materials left by that culture prove that the inhabitants were Asiatics, who originated in southern Canaan and not native Egyptians. They grew to a great multitude of prosperous urbanites suddenly about 100 years before they mysteriously disappeared. Evidence of their urban affluence came to an end. Then, in the mid 15th century BC, occupation and tel at this place, you can read the name for yourself, by both Egyptians and Asiatics suddenly ceased. Although the excavators are baffled as to what caused this, the Bible tells us exactly what happened in Exodus 3 to 12. Now, the other thing that he says that we have no evidence of 2 million people traveling through Sinai Peninsula, so we do not have any evidence of that. So the archaeologists that claim that Exodus never happened, they are not actually based on evidence, but largely on its absence. The archaeologist and this person assert that we have combed the Sinai and not found any evidence of mass of millions of people whom the Bible says were there for 40 years. That assertion is not actually true. There haven't been major excavations in the Sinai, and we certainly, most certainly, have not combed it. Moreover, uncovering objects buried 3,500 years ago is a daunting endeavor. An Israeli, he, he said that a vehicle that had been lost in the 1973 Yom Kippur war was recently uncovered under 16 meters, that's 52 feet of sand, 52 feet in 40 years. Thus, no evidence of sudden drop of 2 million people in Egypt. Traveling is impossible. So, this is how it is. But we do have actually archaeological evidence, and the traveling we cannot find because it is impossible. But then no evidence of people suddenly arriving in Canaan. So he said three things which we do not have evidence for: a sudden drop, we have, I just showed you; then traveling through Sinai Peninsula, I just told you why we don't have any evidence of that, and no evidence of people suddenly arriving in Canaan. We actually have evidence of this, and this is why I am going through with you to this. So this is National Geographic website, as you can all see, and they found DNA of Canaanites. Let me actually read for you. Cookies. Do not give me real cookies. Only give me these cookies. Yeah, anyways. So here we have DNA from the Bible's Canaanites lives on in modern Arabs and Jews. And it shows that the study in cell shows that the migrants from the distant whatever mountains, so they came, and then here we come. I will just read the most which is most important for us. Biblical text written many centuries later, well, not many centuries later, but whatever, insists that Yahweh promised the land of Canaan to the Israelites after their escape from Egypt. Jewish scripture says that the newcomers eventually triumphed, but archaeological evidence doesn't show widespread destruction of Canaanite populations. Instead, they appear to have been gradually overpowered, and they actually were gradually overpowered. And we find this in the Exodus. God promised them that you will gradually overpower them. Here, Exodus 23:29 to 30. I will not drive them out from you in a single year, so that the land will not become desolate, and the animals of the field become too numerous for you. I will drive them out from you little by little until you become fruitful and take possession of the land. So we have two archaeological evidence of the 3 points that he mentioned. And why we don't have for the third one, I just told you. Okay, let's see what he has else.
Even if the Egyptians tried to cover up their embarrassing defeat in their records and monuments, there would have been no way to cover up all the physical evidence that would have resulted from the movement of that many people.
I agree. The Egyptians could not cover up, and even in Egyptian things, we have from Egyptian sites, we have historical evidence. For example, one historical evidence would be this one, and this is present in the British Museum, and you can see I got it from the British Museum.org. So it is called Papyrus Anastasi 6. I don't know how to say it. So Anastasi 6 from 1200 BC describes Egyptian authorities permitting a group of Semitic nomads from Edom who worshipped Yahweh to venture past the border fortress in the region of Wadi Tumilat and proceed along with their livestock to the lakes of Pithom. So this accords well with another artifact, the Merinth, the steel. So this is another one. So anyways, so we find that whatever it is written in the Bible, it is present in the Egyptian historical records. Not only in Jewish, we have this in the Egyptian as well. And also, he says that the old timings and the old stories were myths. Well, here is another one. If the ten plagues were myths, then we have another reference of them in Egyptian history documents, Egyptian historical documents. Here, whatever it is called, so it shows a violent description of disorder, and it shows what is actually written in the Exodus story. So here, world has been turned upside down. A woman who had not a single box now has furniture. A girl who looked at her face in the water now owns a mirror, while the once rich man is now in rags. So this is what happened. The Egyptians, they gave everything to the Israelites to go from them. So we have the document of 10 plagues. It is just from the Egyptian point of view. So, but we have. So here we have in the Egypt the physical evidence, the document evidence. So what more do you want? I don't understand. Then he goes on to say this guy, blah blah blah, and he gives his own interpretation of Moses. And then he talks about these multiple sources which we have already covered. And what is his conclusion? It's very interesting. Then he talks about Manetho, how Manetho says, but Manetho he doesn't talk very deep. Manetho doesn't talk in detail about Moses, and it doesn't match with the archaeological record. The evidence that we have in archaeological record shows what is written in the Bible is true, not this guy. And he reduces Moses to some sort of renegade leader who introduced some bold ideas. Well, the only one who is biased here, I think it is you, because you, centuries later, are telling something which is, based on your own ideas. So we are sorry to say, if we cannot trust the Bible, we cannot even trust you, because the Bible was written centuries before you. And if a document which was written centuries before you cannot be trusted, that means you cannot be trusted. So whatever you're saying is really irrelevant. Then he says that there is no unbiased source of Moses' life. First of all, there is a mistake here. It is already ending in s. So to make it possessive, you just put the apostrophe and you don't have to put another s. So yeah, you're a history teacher, but your grammar is kaput. So he says the Torah promotes a particular religious worldview. Yes, I agree that it does, but it is not biased. Because as I said, in all the history, everything was written for the glory of their people and for their kings. This source, Torah, it shows that Jews were mistreated and they were slaves. Such a humble beginning. Showing this, would the Torah be biased? Would any people show that they were so humble in beginning? No, they will not show that. Then Moses, it was shown that he was a murderer. He killed an Egyptian. Then he was afraid. Can you imagine a leader being afraid and telling himself about being afraid? No, of course not. And then he was not good of speech. He did not have eloquence of speech. All these things are written in Torah, and still you're saying that Torah is biased? Come on. You gotta be kidding me. And then he says how much time passed. So these are the records. He says that the first historical record that we find about Moses is about 1,000 years after. Again, wrong. As I said, Bible was written. The Torah was written by Moses. It was written by Moses. That means it was written during his lifetime. It is not 1,000 year gap. Then it is not biased. And then archaeological evidence lines up with it. That means whatever is written in Torah is correct. And then these are the things that he says the archaeological evidence contradicts the biblical account. No, the archaeological evidence actually prove the biblical account. There are numerous conflicting accounts in other texts, yes, but we will see about the archaeological evidence, and it shows that the Bible is true. All of the textual sources are likely biased. No, they are not, as I've pointed out in defense of the Torah. All of the textual sources were written many centuries later. No, Torah was written during the lifetime of Moses. So Moses is more of a legendary figure than a historical figure. No, that is wrong. Wrong. And this genre of writing was used. So let me tell you, in the Bible, history was used, not another. So as I've explained. So if you want to talk more about it or want to discuss the details, you can message me and everything. Okay, so this was my first video about did Moses exist or not. I'm going to talk about Jesus's existence next. So do support me on my channel, like, comment, share, and do subscribe. And yeah, if any way you can help me, do let me know, because I would like to make videos in defense of the gospel for which we have been called. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And yeah, God bless you all.